host Ben Guler. He's partner and CTO of Evil Lab. And I had the opportunity to meet Ben in a Chicago AEC tech conference where, like, at that time, I was the organizer and, like, he was attending and he had some very interesting ideas. And after that, a lot of big things happened, including launch of Veras plugin. So I thought I gotta have Ben on my show because these guys are killing it. So thanks a lot for your time for doing this.
Thank you, Mayor. It's an honor. It's great to watch your video content and to meet you in person. That was really cool to see you. Like, oh, I think I've seen some videos of you online, and then like, oh, now I got to meet you in person. You're the guy. So then I connected the dots. So it was really good. But yeah, it was a fun. The Chicago symposium was pretty fun. That was good to connect with a lot of people here locally in Chicago. So it was great.
I see. Go Midwest. We are building great companies from coming out of Midwest. So that's amazing to know.
Yeah, yeah.
And Ben, if you can walk us through like what were you doing before Evol Lab and how like you made this transition? What were the things you learned along the way?
Yeah, so I might go a bit more deeper just because of it
Yeah.
relates to kind of our most recent product because there's like a story to it a bit. So I didn't know that I was gonna go into architecture, and went to after high school. So then like I went to community college and like tried to see different things, and like one of my counselors did say like, hey, you should try architecture or whatever, and then I loved it. Like I actually tried some courses, and then I went to UIC, and I really liked the kind of layering of like architecture, like art and like the physical world. So I like the idea of build things. So that was kind of like going through school. I kind of had that, and one thing that I really was passionate about, even like doing projects, and this is how it is when you have like so UIC is kind of heavy on design, like the renderings need to look good. So like I always strive to get like the best rendering. So back then, like when I was learning, I learned like SketchUp, and it was really kind of like the easiest thing because the other thing was 3ds Max. I'm like, I tried that for a little bit. I'm like, oh man, I have to. This is so complex. And again, this is like right after high school. So then like I essentially like learned SketchUp and then rendering, and that was like a free plugin, Kirkathea. I don't know if you would remember that or if anyone else, but like that was great, and that migrated into Thea and all that. But that was kind of a thing that I kind of had to hone into because I saw that as a very good vehicle to kind of explain and communicate design. So anyway, so I went to that. I practiced architecture. I got after I finished, I went through a few different design firms, and then I kind of gravitated towards the BIM management role a lot. So I liked technology, and even like in university, I took a Python class, like just computer science, and I loved it. And even like in high school, I took like had a TI 83 calculator, and then I would just kind of like do basic whatever program on it. I have like little tools inside the whatever TI 83 Texas Instruments. Anyways, so like I had that kind of background, and then before I transitioned to Evolve Lab, I started really heavily in like writing more Python code for like Dynamo, and like learned C# and other like languages, and I really loved it. But I also was a BIM manager and was kind of doing that kind of stuff, where on projects and stuff. So I wanted to just code full time basically because I really liked doing that. Like I would just do that nights and weekends all the time, and I would have some days actually throughout the week that I would do that too. And then yeah, found out the Evolve Lab opportunity. I'm like, okay, I gotta. This is great. If I get to do this every day, let's go for it. So then that's what I did. I essentially kind of transitioned from just kind of being on projects into like, writing code like almost every day or writing scripts and helping out. Like as a consultant, you could get to actually work with a lot of different people. So that was really cool to like learn that part, and I've been loving it ever since. And so kind of a lot of times what I do now is kind of I'm a liaison. Like I'm not the best coder, I'm not the best programmer, but like I know both sides of the coin. I was the end user, and so I kind of help out a lot in that space now. Yeah.
That's
So sorry, that
amazing.
was like a longer.
No, no, it
Yeah.
was perfect. And I was wondering, like, I have met like multiple BIM manager, BIM technology manager who are like pretty ahead in like testing out various technological tools and like suggesting to the team. And I'm wondering, like, they are in the sweet spot who knows technology as well as domain problems. So why we aren't
Right.
seeing more like BIM managers starting their own consultancy or tech companies? Like, do you, what's the challenge you foresee?
Yeah. No, I think that's going to become more reality. I think it's obvious that that's already started to happen because you are first you have firsthand knowledge of like the pain points of like this is so broken, like I can't like because I thought, even for myself, I thought I was going to have a more traditional path where I was going to be kind of like an architect and just kind of stay within that vein, and I was going to go heavier on design. And then there was a fork in the road for me. I'm like, well, I wish I had these tools to do that. Like I want to do that, but the tools are so lacking. Like I was baffled by the fact that like when I learned like AutoCAD back in college, that like people are drawing lines to represent 3D objects. I mean, I played a lot of video games when I was like growing up. I'm like this is like 10, 20 years. This seems like archaic to me. I thought it was a joke. And then like so anyways, because you have that firsthand knowledge, especially with kind of the rise of this AI wave of like crazy progression in what's going on in the world right now. Like if you have an idea, it's so much more within reach, and you have to actually execute on it, and actually like if you're the person who's kind of feeling the pain points and like the problem, the opportunity for you to be able to kind of execute on that, those ideas are incredible. I mean, even recently I've seen it. I think you've probably seen it too, like videos of like reading your mind basically. It's like, wow, you can actually read your mind, and if you have some thoughts, you can actually generate code from your mind. Like that's phenomenal. Like because of where we are right now, in time and space, it's like I think we're going to see a rise of that. And I think here at Evolve Lab, like we've always had this kind of fail free zone where we get to tinker with things and we get to play with things, and let's try this thing, let's try this thing, and let's see what works, what doesn't work. Okay, let's iterate on that and kind of have like this, really kind of short kind of cycle on just exploring a lot of different things. And it's really cool to like do that and also work with the people that are like, in the weeds, so to speak, doing that kind of, having these issues. So, yeah.
I see. Yeah, and like one thing I like to say is uh, like you are self-taught programmer, I am self-taught, and like with ChatGPT,
Yeah.
like even a beginner programmer can become like medium level at not an
Yeah.
expert, but the
Right.
overall intelligence of making products, prototyping the friction has reduced to like negligible.
Right. That's like it's so incredible that that's like that we live in a time right now that that's reality. It's so cool. It's so cool.
I see. So, like, tell us how you met your co-founders, and like, I know you have lots of plugins and products at Evolve Lab. So, tell us, like, what was the first thing you did?
Yeah. So actually, I knew about Evolve Lab when I was like learning Dynamo. Like I knew about them. They were like when they started, like when the company was new. Like I was like looking at articles, and they're very kind of had a good like media presence. I'm like, oh, that's cool. They're writing all these articles. I'll follow the tutorials, and like a lot of like cool people have gone through Evolve Lab too, who are like have made an impact in our industry. And so like I knew about them, but I knew I couldn't work there because like I didn't know like C#. I didn't know like all. This is before I was comfortable coding. I'm like I know I need to learn all those things. So like I've seen a job opening once. I'm like, oh, I wish I knew how to do that. Like okay, I got to learn this stuff. I got to learn this stuff. And like eventually like I got more comfortable and actually started to write a few different plugins at the previous architectural firm that I was working on. And then when I saw another job opportunity come up, I'm like, oh, now's my chance. So essentially that's like that's kind of how I've known about Bill. And then like when I had there was like a really nice synergistic connection when I talked to him when our first calls together. I'm like he gets it, like I get it, like oh wow, like we have such a similar like energy. And like it was it was a very good like conversation that we had in our interview. And then it's like okay, let's make it happen. And like Colorado was very interesting for us. We did want to move actually because that was kind of like it wasn't a remote location. It ended up being that I actually didn't move because of COVID, and like it was during that time when I actually stayed remote, and we put our house. Sorry, I'm getting into like we put our house was for sale, but it didn't work out, so we didn't move, but I stayed remote. But essentially, it was a really good like just synergy when we talked to one another and like what our goals are and what we want to do. So like we clicked really well. So yeah,
I see. So, through the job opening, you like got into Evolve Lab, and when was this?
I think this was like in July 2019. Yeah,
2019. And at that time,
like six
how
months
many?
later, 2020.
I see.
Goodness.
And
Yeah.
what were the products and service offering at that time?
Yeah, so back then we did a lot of, and we still do BIM management. and we did a lot of computational design. So like a lot of Dynamo scripts and Grasshopper scripts for different entities we helped out on, and interoperability things like that. But it was yeah, those were kind of the main two things. We had some app dev services, but at the time when I was working, like we didn't really have much of those clients. And so that's kind of one of the things that I was super passionate about, and like I wanted to kind of like, let's grow this kind of side of the business. Let's have like application development services. So it's all like work for hire basically. We didn't have actually well, we actually did have Helix product before then. I should say that, but we kind of took it off market for a while because there were some things that we still had to fix with it. So but that was kind of the main kind of thing when I came on. It was like computational design, which actually was really fun to work on a lot. We still do that, but we don't do it as much. And then like Bim management services, which I kind of didn't really do. We had other people doing that because I was like, I want to stay in coding now. Yeah. Anyway.
That's awesome. I think like I'm gonna like start like screen sharing so you can walk us through
Oh
like
yeah.
what current products you have and services. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. So for the different apps that we have uh, yeah, let me see if I can move my screen. Okay, perfect. So we have Veras, Glyph, Morphus, Helix, and Bento. And I'll just maybe say a brief thing about each one, and then we can dive however you want to in each one. So Veras is kind of like our AI Viz plugin that was released in I think January 2nd. So we worked on it really hard, like before the new year. We almost try to get it out before the year. But I'm like, oh, okay, well, holidays and whatnot. So we released it right at the beginning of the year. Then we have Glyph, which is our auto documentation suite. So basically, the grand idea with it is that you maintain your Revit BIM model and then let the application generate everything for you. Like it's an additive template where it generates sheets, views, annotations, so on and so forth. That's the goal. And then we have kind of an interesting way to do that. Again, it's not exactly there, but it's within, that's kind of the target for it. We have Morphus, which we've actually, we're about to release, I think, soon. I just say soon. We're releasing soon, which is kind of our generative design tool that lets you kind of just work within Revit, and you have these different kind of modules that you kind of play with. So it's I guess a simple way to put it, it's like a super duper array tool where you could kind of generate different layouts for your building, and then that low res generation becomes high res by baking into walls or pipes, ducts, furniture, so on and so forth. Revit content essentially. And then we have Helix, which is interoperability, which is primarily focusing on SketchUp and Revit interoperability. This is kind of like the first product that we had actually that we've kind of have a version 2 of now that does a lot of interesting things where it kind of BIMifies, unstructured data by a certain way of mapping it, and then it creates kind of native content into Revit that's editable. And we also support AutoCAD for that one, so we could also like convert like CAD drawings into like a pipe diagram into actual pipes with connectors and everything. And then we have Bento, which is kind of like a like a bento box where you have like little eats from different things. It's just a collection of like free add-ins that are like little buttons here and there that like I wish I had when I was working on projects. They're like, oh, just this little button that it's like almost you use it more than like 20 times a day, basically. Some daily tools that are super just minimal, not a lot of like dev went into them, but they're so useful just to have that button as a shortcut or like turning things on. And just this, for example, in this GIF, you see like just turning on point clouds. Like if you have a point cloud linked within another link file, like you can't actually turn it on and off from the UI. You could do it through the API though, which is annoying.
Hmm.
You could hide manually the element, but not that the visibility graphics thing. So yeah, these are kind of like our different products that we have, and then as apps, and then we also have like Revit assets, services, bid management, and app development, and we also have computational design. But again, like I said, we don't do that as much. So uh, yeah, so we have our like BIM, content for Revit, things like that. But again, yeah,
That's it definitely shows how like diversified uh workflows you have, and like each pain point you've gone through while you were doing BIM, and then this plugins like it's the right answer to automate that
Yeah,
task. So
yeah,
makes totals. So I was curious to know, let's say there is a computational designer or BIM manager right now who
yeah.
has a Grasshopper script which automates one task. From that script to like a production level app development, can you walk us through like what are the things they need to consider to make it like scalable or production ready? And like, yeah,
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually more comfortable in Dynamo, so I'll probably use
yeah,
that
yeah,
jargon or whatever for this. But yeah, we've actually done a lot of that. Where in the beginning, like even now, we actually use Dynamo for like a lot of prototyping. Like just if it's like a Revit add-in, we prototype a lot just to figure out like certain things, and then we kind of make that code. We write it out. So yeah, I think this might be kind of the way I did it. So
yeah,
that's, I'll just say it this way, but I'm sure there's kind of more generalized, abstract way of doing it. But I got pretty comfortable with just writing a lot of my things in Python for certain nodes. And so that kind of helped out. But in a macro scale, it's just testing that script in a lot of different projects. And then you kind of find all the different edge conditions. Okay, so I need to count for this, I need to count for this. And that's actually also the problem with it. Like once you get your spaghetti gets so big, it's like only you will know how to navigate that for the next month. And then you will
mm-hmm,
have some issues too. So it's just it's so great to have scripts for scripts and not do scripts for what's not meant to be a script. I think it's good for prototyping, for getting some ideas out really quickly to kind of see if that is even something viable, and then when it's time to kind of like make it production ready, uh, you kind of have the you figured out the idea. Like you figured out like, okay, this is how you get these objects from here and you put them into this organization structure. And then this is your input logic and output. So that's very important. That's like better than pseudocode because like you actually have something that's like actually works. Like you even have like what the API calls are for the parent application basically. And so it's good to figure that part out. And then in terms of scalability, once you get into something like an environment, like let's say C sharp and .NET, like you have a lot of tooling around that. You have a lot of like you could add unit tests, you could automate as you scale up, you could do integration tests, and start to kind of grow in a way where it's compatible for multiple projects and it's for multiple users. Because that's the other thing too. Like, it's so interesting to have an application work for like 100 users in one firm because they all have the same standards, like trying to make that work for thousands of users across so many different firms. Like, oh, never thought this is the most stable app we have. How could it like no, it's like it's in a different language and that character in that language is so that scalability goes, so it's so scalable, and you really do need to kind of like go through something like a proper dev if you want to deploy that to like a larger audience. So yeah.
I see. Interesting. And also like the decision where let's say your audience, for example, is using Rhino, Revit, and SketchUp, they might require like plugins in different programming language, so your client side is different than your backend. So how do you structure your backend, which like maybe using like the REST API
Yeah.
calls like executes for different clients, so make it generic structure enough in the backend that it can handle different clients.
Yeah. So I mean it depends because I mean, there's two schools of thought, right? You plan for like
Yeah,
this to be like, and there's not only two, but I'm just gonna say two
yeah,
ends of the coin, right? One's you trying to be agile, that it's like, I'm just gonna make it for Reddit first or something, and that's all it's gonna be. So I'm kind of almost blinders on. Let's get it to see if it's even a viable idea. So you're being very kind of MVP about it, and then like, okay, if it works, then you kind of have to solve that problem. Now, if you're comfortable like in C sharp and other tech firms are developing a lot on .NET, but the contrast, like a lot of the AI stuff is in Python, for example. But
yeah,
anyways, I digress. So like you have .NET Core, so you can still build out a lot of things that you can deploy, cloud side, and still have a lot of compatibility cross-platform, cross, OSs, even whatever you want to do. And then I guess the other extreme is like, no, we're going to plan for that. So kind of our we're going to have a very kind of specific backend and our communication layer, and then our front end will have to be written or rewritten to be locally compatible with whatever. Or you could also go web dev, and then you just have kind of a lot of different languages, and then you can plan for that. Um, I could see even like depending on, yeah, I think we've taken both approaches and we've seen pros and cons on either one, and like we're comfortable going MVP fast to kind of prove things out, and then like we could distill and abstract what we have, and then we can make it compatible with multiple platforms. So I don't know if that's more common, but that's kind of seems to work. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and depending on like your working style, like it
right.
it makes sense for that. And so I have seen there are sometimes a lot of cool products and problem solving products in AEC, but sometimes it's a different problem of getting users to onboard, or like the distribution is a challenge where like people are sometimes not ready to transition from their current workflow to this new workflow. Any things you can share on like how people should think about it?
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge. Um, yeah, we're such creatures of habit. You know,
Yeah.
I feel like where we're at. Our thinking around that has always been trying to meet people where they're at and trying to make those kind of transitions as easy as possible. So I think that the best example of that is like how we work with Morphits, where it's like this. There's so many generators like this that just live outside of web browser, and they're kind of their own thing, and they want to be the next platform, and they some of them perhaps will become that actually, and kind of they're just building something completely new ground up. But our approach to that has been like, or at least even my approach is something like, let's meet the people where they're at. They're comfortable with the nav system of Revit. It's not, bad. It's not the best, obviously, but they're comfortable. You know what the middle click does and the shift, and that was an investment of that person multiplied by thousands of people that learned this platform to use it, and that's you can capitalize on that. The fact that like, okay, you have so many end users that are on this platform and know the controls and how to click things and like how to go through and browse through their views. You don't have to introduce a new platform, although that new platform much could be way better. But with this vein of thought, then the application that we develop on top of that is the same thing. Use the same shortcuts, use the same way of clicking on things, have similar semantics where it's like or jargon. Like if you have a type, okay, users know what a type is, so you can use it that way. It's also kind of on parallel with even programming actually, which is great. But that's kind of been the approach with that, like trying to make the transition and the piece less less kind of less reduce the friction as much as possible. Simplified UI, 3 buttons if possible, uh, if possible, basically, and then hide the complexity, and then not hide it, but like allow the complexity to be gracefully kind of explored. And so um, that has been the approach. And if there's kind of take and people are more adapting and kind of using this, then you could expand further, and you could make your own web browser version of that, and then people are comfortable just doing that there. But if you're not, it's just hard to make someone shift. You can only do it, in my opinion, in something that's like 100 times better. Like that product has to
Yeah.
be so good that it's like, well, yeah, it merits that. And is that product that good? Like, well, I know that just this piece right here is a problem that's solving something very important, and it's not going to do it just because you go to another platform and you do it, and then they're going to come back. That transition seems very hard for people. Um, so yeah, that would be maybe my comment on that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's such a great point, because even if let's say one person in the firm find your software 10x better in your platform, it's a group project, so it's also
Mm.
like other people should also migrate, and that
Yes.
becomes a bottleneck. So it,
Yes. It reminds me of, I remember like the different firms I worked at, like they would have like, okay, Revit training because we want to move from AutoCAD, right? And you spend like thousands of dollars on like training, 100 users, and then like they don't use it on projects. And like the fact that if you have a company of 100 people and they all know how to use a certain platform, like that is not trivial. Like just learning the software like is not. Now again, you could say that, and this is kind of the argument that the new platforms, which is very valid, that the software is so bad that's why it's so hard to train on it. You could also make that, but I'm just saying like it's there. The people are there. You could, yeah.
yeah, maybe a different customer segment who is more adapting to new, but also yeah, I could
Yeah,
see
yeah,
like the point. And
yeah.
you mentioned briefly about the UI, and I'm pretty sure like in Veras there are like different machine learning models with like 50 of parameters you can
Oh
customize,
yes,
but
of
but
course.
you simplify it to few. Like how do you decide how many parameters to expose, which comes at the customization flexibility?
Yeah, research, see what parameters do most impact, and if you like, okay, if you could only pick one thing, like start there. Like, what could you do? Like, could you not have a prompt? Could you not have a slider? Like, okay, what could you do with that? Okay, that's close. Like, could you just have one button? Okay, well, what if I did have one slider? Okay, which one would it be if you only get one? Like, I know which one I want. So it's kind of like this kind of deduction of like, and then you still don't want to, and we're going to add complexity to it because obviously, there's so much complexity you could add. Like you just mentioned, like you could do so much. Like it's just, it's crazy. And so it's like, how can you infuse and bring those things to the end user in a way where those kind of simplified things are still there for the beginner users that are just learning and not being overwhelmed, but oh, I didn't notice that there's the three dots, like let's say an ellipse expander, like okay, like that, okay, that's where you could get more. And when you're more advanced, like you kind of like where to click more. So a lot of good interfaces just do that naturally, and kind of you have the most important things, the visual hierarchy and the scaling of things. Like that's the big thing, that's the colored thing. There should only be one. Not everything should be the same thing because then it reduces, that accent, the call to it. So yeah, I think it's so critical for a UI to be good at both the beginner and solving it for the more advanced users while not taking away from the beginner, because that's how a lot of interfaces could like grow into like, well, now it looks like an airplane cockpit, and it's like I don't even want to start. I don't even know what that word means. So it's like it's overwhelming to even start when you have something like that. So yeah, that's kind of like our take on that. And like for example, Helix, we know that there's so much work we could do on that one to simplify the mapping system. You can make it like three buttons and then still allow the mapping to happen like for other users, but just kind of simplifying that because it's a complex process of trying to convert unstructured data into a BIM model. Uh, Things like that. You just want that's that graceful kind of like onboarding, because a lot of people like don't go to docs or anything or research. Like they just want to
Yeah.
drive and I'll learn it on the fly. Like almost most people are like that. And if they can learn on the fly, they just kind of there's like a certain like amount of time that they're willing to invest, like a minute or two maybe. If they're really passionate, maybe 5 minutes, and then you lost them. It's like okay, well, I tried, but it wasn't like worth the play or something. So yeah,
Nice. And I must say, like, kudos to you guys. You did a great job in like I personally have seen Veras like people using it and the UI,
yeah,
so I could vouch like, and I know like what are the parameters that like such machine learning model exposes. So like a lot of
exactly.
reduction in decision making, which helps more playfulness and testing. So
Yeah,
and one thing I wanted to ask related to Veras is like I'm connected to a lot of people in the AC tech circle, and when you guys launch, a lot of people
yeah.
sharing. So there is definitely a virality component you guys achieved in Veras. So what was the main parameter? Was it like right thing at right time, or was it like the UI? Was it the plugin integration, and you were the first ones? Like,
Yeah, I think there's a few things. I think mid, I think in August of last year, we've seen kind of a blow up of a lot of like mid journey posts. And it's like everyone was like doing that and like it's like so much and like but then and you could even see how like mid journey progressed through version 2, 3, 4, like as it and you could see like visual difference and some people complaining, some people liking it basically. And there's a lot of that. And then, there's like so it was kind of like really like right now it's not as maybe those virals, those kind of posts. But back then it was like because it was the first kind of iteration of that. So I think first to market was kind of definitely one thing where like it's the first one for Revit or for Rhino and Schedule. Like it's the first thing that kind of shows, kind of, and people know that this is progressing so fast. Like it just shows a vision of what's to come. Even it's not even like this could become so much more even. So first to market was definitely a thing, which is why like we really pushed for accelerated uh, ability to kind of get like you know get it out as soon as we could, and that was kind of the MVP version of it. It's like very simple. Like I think we didn't even have a nav rail when we released it. I think it was so basic. It was like you just get this thing and you just yeah, whatever. Anyways, so that was one thing. The other thing I think is Evolve Labs' position too. Like we're pretty kind of known in the industry, so that I think is really cool to like actually we already had a pipeline. We had already a bunch of different products out there. We had Helix and Glyph and Morphus in closed beta, and so it was kind of like that was another. Maybe that's the third thing actually. So the first thing is kind of the marketing side and like kind of Evolve Labs presence, and like the third thing would be like, well, we already have like a pipeline for this all built out for kind of launching different ideas, and we have so like it's just building into that pipeline basically. Okay, like let's add another one, so we could kind of spool up like a new idea pretty quickly, just because we have all that already set. So yeah, those are I think maybe three of the factors if I kind of keep my three that really kind of helped, and just like different users like on the marketing side, like the virality was just it kind of marketed itself, which is so cool. It's like people are just playing with it, like, oh wow, okay. Like I was looking like every day with Bill and like online, like wow, this is so cool. Like people are just posting about this, so it was really cool. Yeah, it was really kind of cool to kind of launch it and to like kind of see that kind of a flower the way it did. We didn't anticipate it becoming that viral right away, so it was really cool.
Yeah, and I can tell it's a different level of satisfaction when you see your product being like people making YouTube review videos
Yeah,
and
it's so
like okay,
different.
yeah, yeah. that
Yeah,
that's amazing. And I have like uh this question where I was thinking about this in the morning, where a lot of people are talking, okay, how do you uh survive against the incumbents? Like for example, what I mean by that is a lot of like established companies, they could adapt to AI, and they might already have like functions and components built in which they can automate with AI, versus startup where they are very AI native, but they will build a component from scratch. So who's gonna win it faster?
yeah,
And like, have you guys thought about
yeah.
anything in that?
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. I think two thoughts that I have on that. One is like there's a difference to have an AI first approach versus a kind of adaptation, strategy. Which again, there are incumbents and that are doing a lot of work, and also I think there's almost a different also niche too, like for specifically for Veras, where it's like, well, it's not like it is visualization and it's not that great at visualization right now. Actually, it's because it kind of muddies up some of the geometry which you don't want for visualization. So it's not even apple to apple right now in comparison, where it's like incumbents would just what you put into it you'll get, and you could almost scientifically do that. Like path tracing is a very good simulator for reality, but so is machine learning. Like, but it's not there yet. But machine learning could be and could go farther beyond. Like, what are the limitations of that? And then what are the yeah? So AI first would be maybe one thing, and then the other thing is just kind of um, like the intuition that we're putting into it, ideas that are like not like it might be different ideas for them, might be different ideas for us that we're just exploring, and if we're exploring them now versus kind of catching up, that's kind of different. So I don't know if that's that good of a point, but I think I had another idea about like um, yeah. So maybe those are the two main ones. I had another thought in my head, but it kind of slipped my mind. But anyways, yeah,
I see. Yeah, like because like I'm in like Silicon Valley, and there are like a lot of discussions where okay, how do you establish defensibility if you're like
right,
developing things now, and like incumbents like can adopt it? Like, so
yeah.
what's the moat if
Yeah, I remember actually the other thought. Sorry. So
yeah,
like, I was watching this. I don't know if it was a talk or listening to a talk, and I'm forgetting the details too. But for example, if you look at our industry, actually, you can put from our industry, like the motivation for something like uh, building a new Revit, for example, like it's not there. Like you have something that works really well for a very specific thing. Like you want to build that and just capitalize on that. It's not worth redoing it from scratch. You could build a new product, so it'll be a new product. I think that's how it is. So if everyone's building a new product, then it's just the similar starting point. So that's kind of like the maybe the second idea that I really had
Yeah.
that I kind of muddied up there, where it's like that's just kind of patterns that happen. And the interesting thing is, and this is why we actually even like one of the reasons why we started working on this product to begin with is just our like we've always been kind of at the forefront of trying new things. Basically, like when Dynamo started, like okay, we're going to be there. When all those different things that are emerging technologies want to be there, so we help our because we're services, our traditional model, we're helping our clients and customers for that. And so because we tinkered, like that's the agility of that and our team size is super incredible to have that because this technology is so ever changing that like even if you start it again like tomorrow, like okay, it's very different things that you can build in. And so that ability to be nimble and not like having kind of a chain of command that like oh you have to kind of get like all the pass all the red lights or whatever, like that is something that's interesting, which is also exciting for like startups that are taking this on because it's like well, it's okay. Like it's fine. Yes, of course they can, and they most likely will, and that's okay. But it doesn't mean that's the same exact idea or it's the same. Like they might not introduce language models. They might not add these things. The cool thing about now is that you can have any idea and it can become reality almost. And so, like try your creativity. It's not the same creativity as someone else. I feel like there's so much more opportunity now to do such diverse things that like, and obviously, things will coalesce in the future, but we don't know how which ones will coalesce and what becomes the better and the not so good. So like, I don't know. I guess I just have a very optimistic outlook in the future and like maybe I don't think about it that much about like we'll just see it. We'll try another thing. Like we'll try this
Yeah.
and try that. So I don't know. That's been my attitude.
Yeah, like I think like being in a startup, you are always like have that survival instinct. So if
Yeah, yeah.
something
Oh
happens,
man.
you'll find another way. That's
Yeah,
true.
well, add this, add that, make it work.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I love the response. And I was thinking like a lot of times I've seen like when you ask ChatGPT like create let's say a Revit Dynamo function or Graphs Rhino function. Sometimes it gives right and sometimes it don't. And
yeah,
depending like if it's a computational designer prompting it versus like a designer who doesn't know coding,
right.
and it could be something trivial mistake ChatGPT might have done in the Python code, but if it doesn't execute, the designer suddenly loses trust in like maybe the AI system or implementing, and they close the window. So I was wondering like, do you think there'll be a layer of like opinionated plugins or like logic on top of ChatGPT or LLM response, which avoids this kind of edge cases.
Definitely. I think that's a given. It's like prompt engineers, like that's a real thing. Like being able to speak the language of the computer, basically. It's not coding anymore with this technology, but it's still syntax that has fine details to it, like how you actually are running it. So there's going to be people that are more linguistic that could kind of explore that with the large vocabulary to kind of figure out what really works, has domain knowledge and what needs to happen. That could become that layer on top of like, okay, well, I figured this part out. So now if you ask any other sentence after this prompt, half of the prompt, which is kind of like really good, um, it'll kind of fail free almost, like not fail free, but it'll free of failure, perhaps as close to like it will get you some decent results, like code that actually runs or something like that. Like,
Hmm.
but and so that's one thing. The other thing is like it's still nascent, like it's still improving like crazy, and um, yeah. So that's I'm very excited about that, and I think we've already seen a lot. Like if you like are on social media and you're watching a lot of different people, like there's such a blow up on like okay you try this, did you try this, did you try, like so many people are kind of like just gaining popularity and kind of just by kind of showing to the world like what you could do basically on all those different fronts where you kind of use this engine a certain way. So yeah, I think it's very evident and it's already happening and we'll see more of that. So it's really interesting.
I see. And like AI research is exploding like crazy. Like if you
Yeah,
use like there are new models being published every other day. There are new, like, people are developing autonomous agent
Every
and
day.
stuff.
It's unreal.
How do you prioritize your time? Okay,
I
what
know.
should I do?
I
What should
know.
I build?
Yeah, so it's definitely difficult. It's very exciting. Like we still got to do our work, so like maybe I shouldn't be working as many hours as I do, but I gotta scratch that itch and like kind of look forwards into and like stay in front of all this technology so that you're like just first of all aware of how it could be done, and then more than that, like you can actually play with it, tinker with it, and then like being in that space and doing that like just gives you the ideas. So like when I like I'll just say this, like a lot of our products like that we have like could benefit. And so I mean even Autodesk speaks about this, like their existing products they could benefit a lot from a lot of this automation. And so like being in that space and playing with it and making something widget, something small, could even be like the reason for you to kind of like become innovative and just kind of like actually a spark might come like, oh, that wasn't I never thought of doing that. The fact I see what I could do with this now, you can kind of imagine what it could become. So yeah, in terms of yeah, how do you manage that? I don't think I've answered that. Yeah, I mean, squeaky wheel. Sometimes it's not the best. It's like I gotta get this out. Okay, projects, got to get that out.
Yeah,
Gotta get this. Work on an app for a client. Okay, we're gonna get that out, ship it out, and then okay, I can jump back on this like products. So we kind of like, you know, kind of shift between like okay, a product development versus services. Yeah, I've been fortunate to kind of have some time to kind of really explore these things. So that's great. Like the way we've worked is like we have BIM services, app dev services, and our products. And like uh, our company has always reinvested its profit back into R&D, which is so cool because
nice.
then that gives us like we're our own investor basically. And so because of that, we get like okay, now you have a bit of a runway to do this, and then you can play that, and that could fail, but maybe it doesn't fail, and then and if it doesn't fail, well, that could generate a little bit of revenue. So then maybe you could try another idea and or embellish it and just kind of get more of that. So yeah, that's kind of been a organic kind of flow, I guess, of how we've managed that.
Yeah, that's a great point you mentioned about like the team. Uh, how do you create a culture of like AI experimentation in your firm? Like, let people test and like hackathons. I don't know, like, what's,
Right.
yeah,
I don't know. I think maybe I'm being weird about this, but it's like some people are drawn to it. Like, I care a lot
yeah,
about this. I'm going to play about it. And like, I'm just going to, yeah. And at Evolve Lab, we actually have pretty kind of flexible, like I said, like fell free for experimentation. So it's that part is like just part of the culture. Like, yeah, if you want to do that, you want to play with that, that's totally fine. Like we've even done things like, okay, people that don't know, like want to learn coding, for example, like, well, okay, we have like some window here. You could like try to make a little ad in here that you kind of are comfortable making scripts for. Like, just let's get you in this code stack. Let's have you learn Ruby or something. Like, let's just try it. Let's just like we have that for like even like small little things that are like not even we're okay. Like that's just investment in you. Like we're okay with like we're not gonna make that product out of that. But then you'll know, and then you can help out with this kind of thing, or it's something you want to do. So it's just I think a lot of that also comes from like Bill's leadership on a lot of it. It's like he likes tinkering and like, and so I think it all works out with kind of like that reinvestment. And so
yeah,
if you're drawn to it, you're called to it almost like just go play with it. Like why not? And let's talk about it. You could talk more about it and like figure out ideas, brainstorm ideas. Let's okay, that's a cool idea. Let's just see what we could do with that. So yeah,
yeah. And it's very rare to have this kind of like work environment. So like
yeah,
it's
I love the job. It's like not even a job. I love I love being here. I think I've told Bill ever since I jumped on like, wow, this has been the best thing, the best job I've ever had in my life. I can't believe it's my actual job, and like it's hasn't changed since. It's great. Yeah,
yeah. I could tell for you work doesn't feel work, it feels play. So it's good.
yeah,
Uh,
it's great.
and like for people who are listening, either like they plan to start their own firm or startup, like can you share some tips about how to find enterprise clients, and is there a different strategy for small and medium sized firms versus large firms?
Yeah, this will be a good question for Bill, actually. But yeah, I'll try to navigate that a little bit. That question. It's a lot of relationships, really. It's like even us, like you and I, like we met each other. We talk. You're going to events. You talk to people, and you never know who you're talking to. Like, well, you introduce whatever, but you don't never know what that could lead to. That relationship. Is what I'm trying to say. And then that person working in that space, like, oh, hey, I really like that conversation, and then I actually even have this opinion that like in the future that will become even way more important because almost anyone could do anything, like especially with like
Yeah.
AI technology. And so it's really about that human connection. Like, okay, I love working with you. Like we have a similar culture. Like we communicate in a similar way. Like, great, let's work together because we're gonna have fun. It's gonna be great. So it, it's it, it's just it's that interpersonal piece I think a lot that kind of helps kind of from like a B2B kind of portion of it. And that's how you can get to build trust. And like if you get to kind of throughout the relationship, you have your highs and your lows, and you can see how that person is during their lows and their highs. And like if something messes up, it's like, well, you're like that when that messes up. Like that's awesome. I always want to work with you. Like that. I like the response that I got from you, and I like that how you fix the problem. uh, this is a great relationship. Let's keep it going. So we've have quite a few clients like that, which is so great to have great clients like that. It's like they come back, they always come back to us and like explain, explore different ideas with us. And like, for example, one client, like they have even their own app dev team. Like they could just like code it themselves. Like why wouldn't they just get like hire us for like a sprint or two and then like we figured out like the core piece and then grow it yourself. But that's not the case. Like we like working with one another, and I think the innovation and the synergy we bring with just both of our teams together, it's just a great relationship. Like we like new ideas come and it becomes really interesting about development that we do together. So I think that's has been my experience where that's where a lot of uh, how do you want to kind of approach to expand in that domain?
I think
Yeah,
like that's a great piece of advice. Like having that trust, building relationship. And I also felt like branding your company, like the social media presence, be it through
of
like
course.
LinkedIn, like also helps you navigate out
Yes.
from competition. Yeah.
Don't take
Bill,
that away
I
from it
see
at all.
Bill all the time, man.
Yeah, no, and that's why I said Bill, like he's been doing a phenomenal job at that ever since he started the company. So like, that's great. It's like that's how I knew about them. Like to like that's so cool about that because you can even like find other talent and like, oh, if you have a job opening or whatever, like you kind of, because I remember working at other firms where like that's like a whole like trying to just get good talent in, like that's a whole like investment for the managerial staff. Like, and then you have different agencies that you work with, and then it's like hit or miss a lot. But like if that kind of comes to your doorstep, it's such a unique, I don't know, it's such a unique thing to have that marketing piece. I don't want to take away anything from that. That's definitely a big point in all this. I guess myself is like I don't think in that space as much. I think about like kind of the space where I'm kind of mainly working on. But yeah, yeah, good point.
I see. And anything which we didn't cover in this interview and you'd like to share, like in the technical side, business side, or anything?
Uh, I'll just say like I think it's an exciting time to be alive. Like, and it's exciting to be in the AEC space. Like I've always felt like the XP, like I said earlier, like with the video games versus AutoCAD comparison, like it's behind. It's behind most industries, and that's like awesome. Like that's a problem you can fix. And now with kind of the rise of AI technology and a lot of things that are happening in the world, like each individual could really make an impact in this industry. And it's just exciting. It's exciting to be alive. It's exciting to get to work with this technology and to work with people you like love working with. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, actually, I had like a question which I wanted.
Yeah.
Like, is there any like hot take or controversial take you have right now for AI AEC developments? Like, if people are building something which, yeah, which might not lead to long term or short term value. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say that I think there's been some kind of like controversy with some of the like, okay, is this like I don't know if I have a hot take on it, but it's more like AI technology is going to come regardless of if you agree with it or not. And I think there's one side of the coin says, it's going to replace us, and the other side's like, no, it's going to augment us. I really do think that it is going to augment human life. It's not going to replace it. I think human ingenuity has always been like we create our own jobs. Like we've invented all our jobs, all the things that we do. Like if you don't do that job anymore, you'll invent another one. That has been the pattern for civilization. Like we've always been humans have done that. The only question maybe is like the rate of change. Like it's you know like civilization. Like if things accelerate too fast, like how adaptation, like things could spike. Like COVID is an example, right? I mean that was like it accelerated at a rate that was like different than other sicknesses, basically. And so like uh, there's nuance there that people have different opinions and it's uncharted territory. I'm like excited about that. So others are, could see doom and gloom on that. Uh, Reality might be somewhere in between. Maybe might be some of that. It might be the other, some of it too. But I'm just excited to find out. So
I
yeah.
see. And for people who are listening, like Evolve Lab have solved like problems in like automation of tasks, like be it like construction document. What are some problems which you may or may not solve in future, but like people who are listening and who wants to solve like problems in AEC with tech could work on?
Okay. So things we haven't solved that. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think people are already working on this. It's like kind of just a better set of tools for like the incumbents, basically. Like, and I think it's coming like very soon. And we've tried to like again, we try to stay agnostic for platforms as much as possible. Again, the incumbents will be kind of the ones. That's where we're going. Where the people are at to support the people.
Yep.
If you're working in that environment, we want to support you. So we'll help you with your toolings, and we know those toolings too. If you're going to this environment, this new one, great. We're also learn that environment, and we'll learn to be ahead so we can support you there. So that's kind of I don't know if yeah. So that's something that we're not tackling right now, and I think others are tackling. Like actually the ground up piece. Like
Hmm.
can you do it like differently, ground up, the whole process in the AEC, and has there's a software piece to that, and there's beyond software too, and that could be soft too. It could be also by technology in a certain way, but yeah.
That's pretty cool. I think I had a great time hosting you, Ben.
Thank you.
Like, there's so many interesting ideas, advice, and insight you shared, and I hope it will be useful for the audience. So, thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you for your time too, and have a good weekend.
You too.